Good evening and a very warm welcome to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios here in downtown Colombo. And as usual, we're joined by senior journalist Bandula Jayasekara and former diplomat too. Good evening, and how are you today?
Good evening, Faraz.
That's been a long day for you.
Yeah, since 4 in the morning.
Wonderful, you're working hard. And we are also fortunate and glad to welcome Marwan Markan Marka, the foreign correspondent based in Bangkok for a Asian news agency. Good evening, Marwan, and
good evening,
warm welcome to our network.
Thanks very much.
We're happy to have you here.
Looking forward to.
Bandula, today I thought we'd talk about something that's been in the news. President Sirisena has summoned and met with the Central Committee of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, and he's taken in, made some decisions. We're hopefully we're going to be joined by the President's legal advisor, Mr. Faisal Mustafa, who will hopefully share. Hopefully, indeed, because sometimes he won't. But hopefully he will share. And also, we want to talk about Marwan's trip around Sri Lanka, in which he has been observing various matters in connection with our country, and especially the elections and so on, and some interesting things coming out. And we also want to talk about the icon of the most outspoken newspaper in this country has ever had, the late Lasantha Wickramatunge. So we're being told that we are unable to get in touch with Mr. Mustafa just now, so perhaps we can go straight in to Marwan. Marwan, you've been here and you've been observing, you've been visiting. How long is it since you've last been in Sri Lanka?
Well, I was here in June.
Okay.
I sort of make regular trips, and the trip in June was actually to prepare my understanding of the trends leading up to the elections.
Right.
And that saw me visit Jaffna to get a feel for what was down in the north.
And how long was there a big gap before you went in June to Jaffna?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first visit back since the war ended.
All right.
Yeah, but I used to cover the conflict during the 90s, and so been back during the CFA in that period, but not since the war ended.
Right, so you've visited after quite a while.
Yes.
And did you travel extensively in the north?
In the northern province, I should say.
And did you notice, what did you notice? What did you see?
Well, in the urban centers, clearly there was hardly any evidence of a war that had taken place, and I think a lot of rehabilitation efforts and efforts to clean up and give the Jaffna city a much more pleasant face had been achieved.
Right.
But if you travel beyond the main city centers into the hinterland, you still come across remnants of towns or villages where people still are experiencing the pain of the conflict. You still have houses that have not been rebuilt, evidence of them being shelled.
Marwan, at the time, I think, we used to laugh about this Douglas Devananda making the film hall like a garrison. Is it still there?
Yes, Douglas, I understand, does operate from a cinema hall that the EPDP commandeered during its heyday in Jaffna, and still does.
And so he hasn't given it back. Is that what you two gentlemen are trying to say?
I'm not sure. I haven't checked.
Because that was quite famous and that was very much in the news, and I think things have changed. Maybe Douglas should hand it over to the cinema owners.
Better late than never. We have Mr. Faisal Mustafa on the line. So let's ask him. Good evening, Mr. Mustafa.
Good evening, Faraz.
Mr. Mustafa, I would like to ask you, President Sirisena met with the Central Committee of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. What went on?
Faraz, as you know, His Excellency President Sirisena gave a pledge for a national government. he put it before the Central Committee, and the Central Committee approved it, and he appointed a committee headed by Madam Chandrika Bandaranaike Marathunga to pursue the matter and to have a dialogue in moving forward.
And could you tell us whether the post of the leader of the opposition was discussed?
No, I mean, it was not discussed. The question whether we should join and be a part of the national government, that was the subject of discussion, and their consensus reached that we should be part of a national government.
And one more question, very quickly, Mr. Mustafa, and we do appreciate your time. Can you tell me, please, what is your definition of a national government?
A national government is a government where there's an open invitation to all parties to be a part of it. So, as you know, His Excellency the President Maithripala Sirisena made that pledge when he contested the presidential election. And keeping with his pledge, he put it before the Central Committee and asked whether the SLFP should be part of a national government.
So once the SLFP has given their stamp of approval, so to speak...
Yeah, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party has given the stamp of approval.
And will the SLFP be part of this government for just 2 years or beyond that?
I think initially the discussion is to be a part of a government for 2 years.
Right. And why is this limitation of 2 years then?
I mean, you first enter into agreement for a particular period of time and see how it goes, and then you move forward. I think it's based on that.
And will there be an opposition party as well then, in this national government?
I mean, obviously there will be an opposition as well. So in any parliamentary democracy there is opposition, but there's a lot of work involved on how this model is going to work.
And are you part of that whole process?
I'm a part of the SLFP.
And who will be the Deputy Prime Minister then?
The Constitution does not provide for a Deputy Prime Minister at present.
And what about this issue of the national list? Has that been all ironed out?
I'm sure that matter will be resolved, but there is a court order where Professor Vishwavitarna was recognized as the General Secretary of the UPFA and Honorable Duvinda Dissanayake as the General Secretary of the SLFP. So I think, there shouldn't be an issue with regard to the General Secretary of the UPFA.
Well, Mr. Mustafa, I think we'll make this the last question. Can you tell me, these candidates from your party that have lost the election, who contested and lost, will they be accommodated in the national list?
I think the President, His Excellency the President, has not decided on who should be included in the national list. So I think that there is time for that to decide.
Indeed. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Mustafa. As always, we appreciate your support.
It was a pleasure talking to you for us.
Thank you. And on that note, we'll take a quick break from Newsline, and do stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good evening and welcome back. We're joined here by Marwan Makan Maka and Bandula Jayasekara. Marwan, on your visit to the north, did you notice if the Sri Lankan government have walked the talk?
It all depends on what talk you're referring to.
The talk has been all about development. In the previous government, they've always made a thing that they have been developing the north. They have done lots of work in the north.
Well, there are sections in the urban centres of the Jaffna, as I mentioned before, where clearly they have delivered on some of the more infrastructure pledges that they had made. Roads have been cleared and have been built, and people can move rather freely. Buildings that were damaged due to the war have been restored. So from a visual point of view, one can see that, yes, the Rajapaksa government had done much to improve the infrastructure and the physical layout of the urban centers in Jaffna.
So in a way, they've sort of delivered, they've prioritized, they've done it where there are more people, where to benefit most first.
Well, I'm not sure what their priorities were, but in this case, it's if the priority was physical infrastructure development, well, then certainly much of that has been done in the highly concentrated areas. But as I said before, the more you travel outside, beyond these urban centers, clearly the wounds of the war are visually evident. And but what needs to be kept in mind in any post-conflict society is it's easier to try to impress people with the infrastructure achievements. Putting up a building could take a few months, but healing wounds and reconciling takes a longer period, and I think that's where the previous government did fail to achieve what should have been a reconciliation agenda.
Bandula, going on a bit more from what Marwan was saying, do you think the previous government didn't do enough to address the wounds of war?
It's
the long term.
Generally, it takes a long time, but we even in the past we have talked of hearts and minds.
Yeah.
But at least what happened is the former President Rajapaksa held elections, and then TNA came in. At least that's, I think, something which people thought that he would not hold elections. But I think there's a lot to do. It's not easy, what happened for so many years to heal. Even if you look back, even in the south, the JP, we have gone through lots of difficulties, 2 insurrections. So it's a long way, long process. Just the buildings will not help.
But I remember that the last government brought back electricity to Jaffna.
Yeah, all that is true. And as I agree, children, the child soldiers, they went back to school, people held the gun, took the pen. But I think you should do more psychosocial, more discussions, more healing process. I'm sure, Marwan, because you have covered the conflict extensively.
But the wish list is long as it is wide. So where's the money to do all this?
Well, I think I don't think the Chinese are interested in investing to heal the wounds of the Sri Lankan conflict. They are more interested in building infrastructure. One thing that Sri Lankans might seriously want to consider, say once we enter September and a UN report comes out, is a suggestion made by some of the human rights activists I've interviewed in preparation for stories. And one suggestion was, the Sri Lankans themselves contribute towards a fund where people help to participate in the healing process and take ownership rather than depend on foreign money.
Marwan, I thought we'll ask you this question since we're all termed journalists. But you are based outside of Sri Lanka, and you work for international agencies and so on. How do they view the media here?
Well, the best measure of how the Sri Lankan media is viewed is when the Sri Lankan media makes the news. And
by getting shot, killed?
Unfortunately, that has been the measure of where the Sri Lankan media stands, and as a result of the conflict, that's been one theme that keeps emerging in the foreign news pages of newspapers outside of Sri Lanka.
So for us, you have made news.
Well, yes, for all the wrong reasons. You worked for this very outspoken newspaper owned by the Vikramatungas.
I worked.
You'd worked in the past. How do you view the ambience now? I mean, you worked in 96, 99.
Yeah.
In the height of the war and so on, right? So how do you view the ambience now?
Where? The leader or Sri Lankan journalism?
No, Sri Lankan journalism.
it's safe to say that the political space for critical journalism has opened up since the January presidential elections.
And that would have brought more than a smile to Mr. Lasantha Wickrematunge's pen. But Bandula, we've all worked there. Both of you worked with him.
Yes.
I, of course, joined after. But it's rather troubling, is it not, that this man, who was the de facto spin doctor of the United National Party for so long, and who formed the UNP government every Sunday whenever he put his paper out, has now, in death, he's been highly acclaimed, posthumous awards and so on, and his brand, the paper, has gone from strength to strength. But yet, 8 months this government has been in power. They've just changed, but they're the same people. His government, his party, and his death is still mysteriously unresolved.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, nothing has happened. I mean, like you and I, we discussed recently also in one of the papers, they said just before the election this is coming out and it's forgotten.
What does this trouble you from this sort of aspect?
Yes. Well, first to put the record straight, I mean, the paper for a long period during the Rajapaksa presidency was not owned by the Wickrematunge family.
Yeah.
It was bought over by an ally of Mr. Rajapaksa.
So that was after his death.
Yes.
About a year after his
so
death.
Just to put the record straight.
Yes.
But in terms of the question, I think any UNP administration, whether it was the one that was a caretaker government since January, or one that is going to begin a term from the August 17th election onwards.
I'm going to have to interrupt you for that. We'll come back to you as we take a short break. Keep tuned to Newsline. Welcome back to Newsline. Marwan, tell us, you were saying about the non-investigation.
So I think any UNP administration, the one that was in power as a caretaker administration after the presidential elections, and the one that's going to form a government after the parliament elections, should investigate the circumstances that led to the murder of Lasantha Wickrematunge and expose the perpetrators and ensure that justice is done.
We've also got others,
Sure, I think it's up to this government that campaigned on pillars such as transparency and good governance to restore the institutions of criminal investigation and justice, and these are test cases. And because they have raised the bar so high, it's imperative on, I think, a very healthy and vibrant social media community to apply a lot of pressure on this government to ensure that they deliver the goods.
This, of course, also includes people who are not journalists, like Wasim Tajuddin.
And we were at the launch of the book of Mr. Kajaragam, and his son also said, that also hasn't come into closure. They want answers. When Ragi, in his presentation and speech, he mentioned that.
It's very odd, 10 years later, that it's still not resolved.
There's many like that in Sri Lanka.
And there was the matter of Saman Kumar,
Rohana Kumar,
Satana,
editor of the Satana at the time,
so the international community are watching over their colleagues in Sri Lanka.
Certainly, and I think if you look at cases of violations against journalists, unfortunately Sri Lanka enjoys dubious company of countries where journalists have been killed, abducted, disappeared, and it's not a happy picture.
How do you foresee the future? Are you confident that Sri Lanka will move forward and meet its international obligations in terms of all the different treaties that they've signed and not appear to have kept their word?
Sri Lankans are known to believe in astrology.
Right.
I'm not one of them. I'm not an astrologer. So it's impossible for me to forecast where Sri Lanka is going to be down the road, whether it's going to meet its international objectives. But any democratic culture and any democratic society needs to take on and shoulder bigger responsibility and apply pressure on governments to meet its obligations. So things that you say are valid, and I think they need to be held accountable. They need to be pressured so that these documents are not just sheets of paper with flowery language, but they are converted into something practical and implemented, and we have supporting mechanisms to ensure they're carried through.
Bandula, does it all go well for Sri Lanka? We have a new government elected by its people.
We can only hope, and time will tell.
But without hope, we have...
we have to hope, because we have to see how it happens, whether it works. That's why we have lots of hope.
Right. On that note, Marwan, thank you very much for having joined us today. It was a pleasure having you on our network.
Thank you.
And we hope to welcome you next time you're in Sri Lanka.
Looking forward.
Don't take too long. And Bandula, thank you very much for your presence. It always adds some stature to this program,
Thank you.
doesn't it?
Thank you for us.
Thank you, even though you are from Trinity. Having spoken about all these sort of complex issues dealing with politics and investigations and media freedom, let me leave you with this thought. In this world of complex cities, simple things become realities. Thank you, good evening, good night, and God bless.